Atlus have established themselves as king of the turn-based JRPG, with several series that only seem to be getting more and more popular, such as Shin Megami Tensei, Etrian Odyssey, Shin Megami Tensei, Etrian Odyssey, Persona, Shin Megami Tensei spin-off, Soul Hackers, Etrian Odyssey, Persona, and Metaphor ReFantazio. Over the years, they experimented with, refined, and perfected the turn-based experience, while other games like Final Fantasy and Phantasy Star were actively trying to move away from it. But at the end of the 90s, as they moved into the 3D space, they did dabble with the unknown in a first-person, melee-orientated action game with RPG elements. Maken X released for the newly launched Dreamcast in Japan in 1999 and was the creation of several Shin Megami Tensei developers, including longtime Atlus writer and director Katsura Hashino. It released in Europe and North America the following year, before being ported to the PS2 a couple of years later, though this version never got an American release. It brought with it a host of changes and upgrades, most notably the switch from first person to third person after Japanese players complained of motion sickness in the Dreamcast release, as well as Atlus's prolific composer Shoji Meguro's remixing of the OST, and new cutscenes were added to flesh out the story. One big change for the European version was the removal of symbolism from various enemies in the game, a move that would probably have some players today asking,
"Are we the baddies?"
Although maybe that's asking for a bit too much introspection. The world is in a chaotic state of rising tensions between the US and China. Food supplies are being poisoned, famines are rampant, and political turmoil exists in every free nation. Sorry, I was just reading the news. The two main players in this shit show are Sangyokai, a malevolent force believed to be behind these attempts to destabilize the world, and a group known as Fukenshi, who are working in the shadows to take them down and restore order, which to this end, a Fukenshi scientist, Hiromitsu Sagami, has designed an artificial demon called Maken to combat them. This is us, by the way. This is our character. His colleagues working on the project have differing opinions as to what Maken actually is. One believing it to be a soulless creation that can be programmed to do as they wish, and the other a living being. They put this philosophical debate to the test by giving us the choice to name ourselves. I just stuck with Maken because I'm really creative like that.
人工知能にしては悪くないネーミングセンスだ。
わざと言ってるでしょう。
研究所の地下にこんな設備があるなんて。
In order for Maken to become fully functional, it needs to possess a human soul, or as this game dubs it, the image, in a process called brainjacking. The agent chosen for this task is elite Fukenshi member and all-round cool guy, Faye, who is in possession of the special gene required to fuse with Maken.
ねえ、フェイさんってかっこいいよね。
そう？
It all goes tits up when Sangyokai assassins infiltrate the lab, kidnap Sagami, and kill Faye as he tries to protect Sagami's daughter, Kei, who at his behest steps up to take his place. We take control, and I was initially encouraged that the gameplay would be fluid as I swung the camera around with the right analog stick, but quickly discovered I was rooted in place, unable to move. The controls are explained as we make our way through the lab's fancy corridors and fight the intruders. Square is attack, X is jump, R1 is block, and L1 is a lock-on, which alleviates somewhat the tanky controls. Circle lets you strafe left and right, and when locked on, pressing X gives you the ability to dodge left and right and do a backstep. Under the life bar shows the percentage at which Maken has synced with the host, and at certain intervals new techniques are unlocked. On the right, image points are displayed, which are spent in between missions whenever you decide to change from one host to another from the collection of meat puppets we'll collect along the way. And under this is the flare rank meter, which increases when you defeat enemies without taking damage and provides an increase to the image points earned. When syncing reaches 100%, the final technique is unlocked.
I am Quark!
And you receive a boost to health and attack power. Interesting. Standing between us and Sagami is the first boss, Andre. He has a few ranged attacks and screeches like a bird, which is highly enjoyable. And while he isn't much harder than the regular enemies, he does just enough to prevent us from saving Sagami. Back at the lab, the scientists find themselves in a quandary regarding Kei's fate, as it seems her spirit has merged to become one with Maken, and only her dad knows how to separate them, much to the dismay of her annoying friend, Ko.
そんなお二人は開発者なんでしょどうにかしてくださいよ
The Maken project seems to be more under wraps than first thought, as its financier, Mr. Lee, calls in and we see the scientists don't actually know what Maken's purpose is. Mr. Lee reveals it was created to destroy the leader of Sangyokai, a man who was once a member of Fukenshi but is now possessed by the devil. We're then given the option of whether or not to carry out these plans. I don't really know what's going on, so why not? Andre sits on the ground, completely at our mercy, and since killing the devil with a 16-year-old schoolgirl seems like a bad idea, we take over by brainjacking him, or as I'm going to refer to it from here on, BJing. During this process, the sword transforms into a scimitar type deal, and if you're thinking, oh nice, each character we BJ is gonna have their own unique playstyle, don't think that. Mr. Lee orders us to Moscow to meet a powerful Fukenshi member, and along the way pop in to see the dearly departed Faye's sister, Shan, in Hong Kong for further instructions.
ここはイマージュ世界。現実世界とは違う次元にある。
Kei, trapped inside Maken's soul prison, formally introduces herself and it's pretty nice in here, and talks about how important her dad is to her since her ma passed away. And while this is incredibly interesting and not at all awkward, it is with a sense of relief that Sangyokai are currently hijacking our plane.
ここは遥か上空逃げ場なんてないわよ
Unfortunately for them, as a birdman, we are in our element. Andre's weapon shines in these narrow areas, with its nice sweeping range that's good for hitting multiple enemies at once. Projectile firing enemies also introduce a deflect mechanic that seems easy and fun enough, and definitely not something that's gonna cause any grief later. We're given 5 minutes to race to the escape pods before the plane crashes after one of the engines explodes, where along the way we have to do some platforming, and with tank controls this is very fun. In order to use said escape pods, we have to BJ Captain Inaba, which does mean losing access to Andre's cool weapon, but to be honest, I don't want to see his dumb running animation anymore. Oh, Jesus Christ. Back in Japan, the scientists gain access to confidential material regarding the Maken project, and discover that Kei has the special gene required to fuse with Maken. Our escape pod lands in the wet streets of Hong Kong, where Kay tells us we don't have time to look for Faye's sister and must continue looking for her dad. I don't think we want to keep running around with this dickhead if there's any chance to BJ someone better, so her desires aren't our top priority right now. The level is poorly lit and has us traversing through dingy buildings filled with enemies until finally finding Faye's sister Shan. She gives us a new mission to go to India and defeat a TV star named Shaja who is under demonic influence and using electric waves emitted through people's screens to make them lose their spirit and become easily manipulated. Sorry, I was just reading an article about social media. Kay is obviously opposed to this idea, and we're once again given a choice. Go to India and carry out Fukenshi's orders, or head to Moscow and find Sagami. All it takes is one dodgy plate of street food and we're shitting our brains out, so let's go to Russia, which honestly doesn't sound much better. Shan faces us in defiance, unwilling to let us BJ her, but we can lock on, forcing the decision of whether or not to bash her head in, a choice that's made easier the more I watch this guy run. Back on the streets, three guys straight from the set of 1975's Rollerball steam towards us, and this is the hardest encounter so far, where the importance of dodging becomes apparent against unrelenting enemies. Before departing Hong Kong, Kay tells us off for killing Shan. I've never been told off by a 16-year-old Japanese girl before, and let me tell you, it doesn't feel good.
人類を救うためにあなたに力を与えたのよ。無意味に人を傷つけるなんてやばいよ。
In Moscow, we meet up with Caddy, who doesn't blame us for killing Shan, so that's nice. He does, however, demand we go to India and kill Shaja, which, still no. A long cutscene follows, where the scientists discover that if Kay's image isn't separated from Maken soon, she'll be lost forever. But also that Sagami sent all his research to one Dr. Guinness.
Don't mind if I do.
Ko slams his dick on the table and volunteers to go to Europe to tell Maken about Dr. Guinness. Even after the suggestion that the Europe of today is like the 12th century, rampant with war and disease. While back in Moscow, Caddy brings us to Sagami, but his image has been extracted by Sangyokai, leaving him as an empty husk. The man responsible is the former Fukenshi member Mr. Lee spoke of, a now incarnated devil named Mr. Meteor, and with this, Fukenshi and Kay's goals are fully aligned, as we're to venture across the world to find his hideout. The snowy streets of Moscow become flooded with enemies, and it's hard not to feel a bit perplexed as to why Atlas didn't update the controls for this port. On the Dreamcast, with its one analog stick and first-person perspective, it's serviceable, but not utilising the PS2's second stick to its full potential leaves the combat feeling very clunky. Alas, we're forced to piss about with tank controls, scrolling through enemies with L1 and being stuck in place when turning the camera. And what even is this area meant to be? It looks like the cages North Korean soldiers are shipped in by before being sent headfirst into the Ukrainian meat grinder. We enter a rollerball arena where the easiest way to deal with the enemies is to just stand at the edge where they can't get you. And after those are dealt with, a boss descends down from the shadows like a Disney lawsuit that escaped through the cracks. Spoderman here hurls grenades non-stop, so the answer is to move in close and exploit his one melee attack, which is easily blocked or dodged by following the golden rule of strafing to the opposite side the weapon's being held on. Our first foray into Europe begins in jolly old London, where I don't know if we're in the Tower of London, or if the entire city has reverted back to the 1800s, and things only get more confusing as UN soldiers show up. Their spin attacks take a bit of getting used to, and you have to be careful with positioning as they like to draw you out into the line of other enemies' gunfire. It becomes more perilous when navigating the dungeons and are accosted by Europe Special Hunting BS Reconstruction Dogs. They launch themselves at you and explode, putting them amongst the group of not good boys in video games. There's not really anything new to learn about Sangyokai in London, but it does open the path to Amsterdam. It's much like London, dark, outdated and filled with... though there is a windmill, so that's nice. I tried out Captain Inaba after having a bit of trouble here, curious if he could deal with the enemies any better. A new enemy teaches us the virtue of patience with lengthy pauses between their devastating attacks, and upon whose death grants us access to sewers that are filled with exploding dogs. There's not really anything new to learn about Sangyokai in
Amsterdam,
but it does open the path to
Lyon.
ゲームの開発には専門家の的確なアドバイスが必要。
You call this texture mapping? Out of the way, Junior. I think we need to add a few more polygons to Stephanie.
Mr. Jericho, can you write down that compression algorithm?
I'm a little busy, Junior.
スーパースタークリス・ジェリコの協力で超リアルな映像が実現。世界最強エキサイティングプロレス3。
See how I arch my back like so?
I can't feel my legs.
We enter the French subway where we get attacked by 50s gangster butterfly men, and if we turn around there's an easily missable room where you can get your hands on another puppet named Baudelaire. Before offering himself, he reveals two pieces of interesting information. The first is that Sagami's wife and Kei's ma was a Fukenshi who died in the line of duty. The second is that back in London, Samuel Smith, possibly the singer, can tell us how to get our hands on Mr. Meteor's henchman. Baudelaire is the most fun to play as so far. His spear has good range and one-shots the basic enemies. Going deeper into the tunnels takes us to a disused mine, where narrow areas are filled with both melee and ranged enemies. It can get a bit challenging in these confined spaces, where panic may set in and muscle memory takes over, which of course does not default to this archaic control scheme. After clearing the place out, Kei provides us with an emotional cutscene, though I don't know if she's crying or suffering from the effects of the mine.
私なら自分の幸せを捨てたりしないわ。使命が大事なら両方守ればいいのよ。
I think I'm getting the black lung, Bob.
In all this confusion, I completely forgot to go back to London to see Sam Smith and headed for Lisbon instead. But before entering the level, we're greeted by a message saying the evacuation order from Asian and European countries could influence the outcome. I don't know what this means, so let's go to Istanbul instead. This stage is a furnace whose explosion we need to prevent while navigating the maze-like building within a 5-minute time limit. After turning all the safeguards back on, we come across a cell where someone important enough to have their own cutscene is imprisoned. It doesn't seem possible to open it now, so we should definitely come back at some point and absolutely not forget about them. On the roof, there's a pretty annoying boss fight where you're almost constantly in the firing line of at least one of the 3 enemies while fighting another. Their ranged attacks freeze you in place, ripe for getting your head caved in. But fortunately, there's a power-up nearby that greatly increases your damage. Compared to everywhere else, Lisbon seems to be doing just fine, apart from all the demons. The weather's nice, and the neoclassical architecture brings an elegance and Mediterranean charm to the cobblestone streets. Then you enter a factory. Now, I don't know if it was the camera or what, but all of a sudden I was incapable of consistently deflecting projectiles, and this stage turned into an utter ball ache. I tried to take out the first 3 enemies using deflections instead of getting too close, as they have a rather unpleasant melee attack. And following this was a series of gauntlets in small rooms packed with enemies, and you can guess how well this went. With each death and reload, the slower the conveyor belts seemed to move and the worse I got at deflecting. A big issue is that from this point, only one enemy drops a much needed health item, this guy, and in an ideal world you kill him with deflections, then run past the box and pick up said health item before it disappears. But this world is far from ideal. This box here, like the rest, moves back and forth to let you through, but if you stand too close, which I did several times in my eagerness to get out of this shithole factory, it suddenly comes back and blocks you off before you can get through, forcing you to watch on helplessly as the health item flashes out of existence, which is especially galling for me because I simply can't get through the gauntlet without it. This bastard box may be a bug, but I'm more inclined to believe it to be a cruel trick by the devs to push your frustrations to the limit. And after eating shit for a good 45 minutes here, I actually stopped recording because I didn't want hours of the same footage, thus didn't record myself actually beating the level. Bastards.
遅かったな。
K は彼女は無事なの？
On a ship somewhere, Ko and Caddy argue about whether to find Dr. Guinness and save Kay, or go to Saudi Arabia and kill an oil king named Youthfu, who Caddy believes is an incarnation of Mr. Meteor, who is an incarnated devil. The incarnated devil? I don't really know. One of the issues reviewers had with this game was the localization, so...
Welcome to hell, motherfucker!
In any case, you can keep them both happy by settling on killing Youthfu first, then going to see Dr. Guinness.
予断を許さないものになったと言えるでしょう。以上、ホワイトハウスから。
Off to Mecca we go to commit several cultural faux pas through a palace that feels like the most Atlas stage yet. It's a series of long copy and paste corridors inhabited by nothing but enemies, and a brief reminder as to why I've never finished a Persona game. After 40 or so minutes of being burned alive, we reach Youthfu in his extravagant arena filled with flames on all sides that illuminate the room with devious hues of red and orange. Youthfu himself is some kind of bizarre Beetlejuice-looking creature that shoots fireballs and swings his meaty appendages with reckless abandon. Getting in close and treating him as one of those rotating doors you see at fancy hotels is a good tactic here. So next we head to the jungles of Brazil to meet... Holy fuck. Can't wait till we meet fucking Professor Firenze Pizza. The basin is flooded with water that you can use to anticipate the attacks from the invisible cats that roam the area. And despite this fun jump and glide thing, Youthfu doesn't actually feel great to play as compared to a maxed out Battleair, so nah. His ranged lightning attacks make quick work of the drones up ahead, making it easier to complete the platforming sections before working through bug-infested caves. And then it's time to meet the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Dublin Guinness.
I'm out.
人はまだ空の星々には手を触れておらん。だから天はわしらに美しい光を与えてくれる。
He explains the process of the reverse BJ, but due to the current conflict between America and China, the airways back to Japan, where the procedure must be done, aren't clear. This feels like a weak excuse given that we continue to gallivant around the entire planet. Maybe he's just a lazy cunt. But in any case, the penny finally drops for Ko and he accepts that the only way to save Kei is to get Sagami's image back from Mr. Meteor, who we learn is currently presiding in the Forbidden City in China. While in the area, the opportunity arises to go to Washington and kill the president, which sounds like a good time to me. He's hiding in an underground facility that's being patrolled by some very retro-looking robots. It's a fairly small stage, stretched out by a lift section where waves of enemies come to taste Baudelaire's spear, before confronting the big man who seems to enjoy a bit too much of the old Colombian marching powder. He cosplays as a space marine in the first phase of the fight, but this is little more than a paint job on the enemies that already litter the stage and is just as easily dismantled. And during the fight, you may be looking at this arena wondering, what's this all about? This is what it's all about. He has the strongest offense and defense of all the bosses, and feels good to play with. Though it's probably a good idea to max him out before heading to the final showdown with Mr. Meteor in the Forbidden City. We can use this grinding as an opportunity to do a bit more exploration. So first up is the Vatican, where the plan is to punch a hole in the Pope, who is almost certainly possessed, going by the nightmarish transformations his priests have gone through, though this could as easily be their true form. Unfortunately, the president is unable to progress through this level. Back in the Amsterdam sewers, we can mess with the water flow, which opens up an area with a club that very much looks ready-made for a boss fight, but it seems we missed the party. It's the same story in Athens, where I actually spent quite a while exploring the whole level several times and found what is definitely a boss room, but again, no boss. Check out these Iron Maidens though. With the president synced at 21%, it feels like a good time to check out the Forbidden City and see what we're in for. The best grinding location seems to be the President's underground facility, as it doesn't take long to get through and the enemies give a generous amount of XP, so it only takes a few runs before getting 100% and receiving a very nice health bonus. Now there's only one thing left to do. We use our impressive strafing skills to bypass the first 3 rooms, then take care of a couple of Temu Spider-Man with a swift combo before coming face to face with a centipede dragon, and beyond to a flight of stairs that would rival those in the Shinra building. At the very bottom sits the entrance to the Image Realm, a swirling chasm of madness and very long intervals between fights. Facing multiple dragons at once is a challenge, and death is highly probable, so get ready to enjoy extended periods of waiting for floating platforms to connect as you appreciate the enveloping gulf. I should just throw myself in. The pearly white gates at the end of a long walkway promise an end to our journey, though whether the world will be in a better or worse state after the confrontation with Mr. Meteor is yet to be determined.
Maken,
Quite unimpressive to look at compared to whatever the fuck it is we're supposed to be. It's a feeling that only grows as he reveals Maken has the power of Pangu, the god who presides over the image world, and this fight will decide who will be its champion. He tries to explain that to fix the world it needs to be destroyed and rebuilt from the ground up, then warns us that Kei's spirit is on the verge of disappearing, and if we fight, she'll be lost forever.
Nanjiが休戦を承諾するならば、相模博光の知識を授けよう。マーケンよ、汝にとってこれ以上の条件はないはずだ。しばしの休戦としよう。どうだ？
He gets quite angry when refusing his offer of a truce and becoming Pangu's servant, but as unimpressive as he looks, he's just as unimpressive to fight. This is probably one of the easiest fights in the game, and you barely have to break a sweat when pounding his head into the ground. In fact, the only reason I lost any health was because I was pissing about trying new moves out. However, this is but a precursor to Pangu itself, who looks like some kind of cosmic seahorse. Half of the fight against this mythical being comprises of deflecting projectiles to destroy all the orbs, which then opens it up to attack. Due to the amount of health the President has, you can tank enough hits for this fight to barely register as a challenge, but there is something beautiful about the concept of an engineered demon possessing the American President to perform a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out combo to destroy an ancient evil from another dimension that has cast the world into a calamity of famine and war. Where are the fucking commas? With its destruction, Kay fades into the ether, and while Pangu's defeat does indeed prove to bring peace and stability back to the world, seeing Maken walk off with Kay's body as her father and best friend stand heartbroken at her loss leaves a bitter taste.
私の娘はケイは死んだのか。
It's a price too steep to pay, and as we're what is essentially a half-grown demonic face forced into saving a world that would no doubt view Maken with as much disdain as any other demon, comes the realization that I feel the same way about humanity as Lee Russell feels about ducks.
I don't give a fuck about these ducks.
So, reloading and replaying the conversation with Mr. Meteor once again, this time we accept his truce, allowing the world to eat itself, but ensuring Kay's survival.
やったわ。
助かったんだよ。マーケンのおかげでさ。どうしたの？どこか痛むの？
どうして父さんを助けてくれなかったの？機械のあなたに人の心がわからないのね。
Oh, this feels even worse than the first time she told me off.